All right. I will now call to order the City of Sherwood Budget Committee meeting for February 7, 2024. David, will you please conduct roll call?
Chair Strode.
Here.
Vice Chair Painter.
Here.
Thomas Sherwood.
Here.
Paul Mayer.
Here.
Nancy Taylor. Here. Brian Fairbanks.
Present.
I know Matt Kaufman said he's going to be out. Tim Rosner.
Here.
Kim Young. Renee Browse said she's going to be out. Dan Stankey.
Here.
Keith Mays. Taylor Giles.
Here.
Doug Scott.
Here.
Tonight's meeting will be a working session only, so there will be no general public comment at this meeting. On to new business. We have a number of items to cover tonight. I will now turn it over to the city's city manager pro tem, Craig Sheldon.
Evening, everybody. I just wanted to take a minute to thank everybody for being able to get together tonight. I know it was last minute. One thing we're trying to do is have these meetings on a quarterly basis. There's been a few changes at the city. As we work through that transition plan, I just, thanks for everybody taking the time tonight to come down to go through the 5-year as well as how we're going to fund the bridge with a loan, so everybody's on board with that. So, thank you.
All right, so the next slide we're going to get to is the Budget Committee calendar. I emailed you all a copy of the Budget Committee calendar this morning, and you should have one with your packet. Really, the main items that concern this committee is the budget meetings in May. So far, they're scheduled May 16th, May 23rd, and if needed, May 30th. We have also started scheduling out next year's quarterly budget committee meetings. So those are also listed there in your packet. But I wanted to get this committee's thoughts, just because this is only our second meeting. What are your thoughts on meeting in April in a couple months? Do you want me to schedule something? And if for some reason we feel like we don't need to meet, we can cancel it, but I just want to kind of get everyone's thoughts, ideas.
If we plan it and then figure out, you figure it out when you need it, then we can.
Yeah.
What? Easier to cancel than to add.
Right.
That's true.
I am learning.
I was just thinking, just in the context of kind of the bigger planning, goal setting, budget process, and then how we work through the year. We just had our goal setting session, and as part of that, we set goals. Staff goes back and generates a list of projects to achieve those goals, and that helps them budget. So I'm only throwing that out there because ideally when we get to budget, we have a list of projects that we want to accomplish for the year or the next 2 years or 3 years or whatever the lifespan of those projects are. And I guess there's a question for maybe Craig and Kristen. Is it worthwhile in April to review that ahead of the budget meeting? I'm just trying to figure out what would we talk about. Maybe.
Yeah, I think we'd be ready to review it if that's something you want to review as a group. Just so you guys know, what we'll do is we'll take those goals back, and then we'll make deliverables that are measurable, and then we'll actually have a plan in place for dates and when those, like I said, measurable goals, and then we'll be bringing that back to the council. But I think we can bring that back to you, and they'll have timelines on them. Some of them will be, like the mayor said, a year. Some of them could be 2 years out. Some of them can be 3 years out. But then they're going to have to fit into the budget, and some of them might not get in the budget, right? So, but more than happy to share that with you guys too at that point.
So, Craig, is there time before this April budget meeting to be able to meet with council and to give your staff enough time to put together some?
I'm thinking so right now.
Okay, great.
We're going to start working on them next week, so I'm thinking by the time we get to April, you guys are going to hopefully see them in March sometime is what we're hoping for.
Okay.
If not, it'll be the first meeting in April that you'll see them, if not in March, because I forgot we're going to be gone the second meeting, so.
Oh, that's right.
So I forgot about that, so.
Are we trying to get money from DC?
That's right, so.
Have the legislature's meeting also,
Yeah.
we might have some forecasts, what they're doing,
think it started Monday, right?
It started Monday, it'll run for 35 days, and we do have some asks in. In Oregon, they call it the Christmas tree bill, which is always the last bill they pass. That's one of the ways they keep everybody there. But we do have some requests in for sanitation funding, helping to clean up the tannery site. What else? I know I'm missing stuff. Oh, Brookman trunk lines and water lines. So we'll know more at the end of session whether we got any of those funds. So
What do you think our chances are? Just
there are a lot of people that want money. The governor is she's trying to put $100 million toward infrastructure funding to help promote housing production. The Speaker of the House and the President of the Senate want to spend more money on mental health. Every city, the League of Oregon Cities had every city put a list together of their infrastructure requirement, and that list alone is $1 billion. So that's my long-winded way of saying I'm hopeful, but we can't count on it. I think there's a good chance we might get one of those if we're lucky. So.
The Brookman truck line, is that also going to be part of the expansion up to Sherwood West?
Yes, you want to just,
Yeah, it'll actually go to probably right at the base, somewhere right by the Elks. So it'll tie in the school, and then it'll be actually for future growth out there too. Clean Water Service is actually doing the project. So it's a project that CWS pays for some of it. Sherwood's on the hook for some of it because of the sizing. And then there's a reimbursement district as well as the SDCs for Sherwood West for that section.
They pushed, I heard the story the other night, they did a whole thing, I think it was last night, did a whole thing on the state legislature to the month. And they talked about the expansion for the growth boundary, and they were really pushing that, so probably a good indication that we'll probably get some money for that.
we'll see. We have a lot of competition, so we're working hard with League of Oregon Cities. That's one of the reasons we have consultants, lobbyists, that help us out at the state and federal level, and our track record's good. I mean, they've helped us bring in $7 million over the last 5 years for various projects, but we're working on it. I'm hopeful. Yeah.
So while you're talking about money, just so everybody knows, we also actually applied last fall for $5 million for the tannery cleanup through EPA Brownsfield grant. We'll know sometime in May on that. It's a slim chance, but we'll see. I mean, I think there's offering 17 awards at 2.5, and I think there was 7 or 8 at 5. But we are pretty far along on the project, so hopefully that'll give us a leg up. So,
let us know.
yeah, you bet. Thanks, Nancy.
Okay, so the next item we're going to discuss is the 5-year forecast. So if you flip 2 pages back, there's a slide in there called Fiscal Year 23-24 Forecast. This is actually the forecast you saw last spring during the Budget Committee meetings. Now, there's been some changes with that forecast. And the next slide is showing where the forecast is coming in currently. And right now, we're forecasting at the end of 5 years that we're going to actually be at 17%. The next slide shows a little side-by-side comparison, just to make it easier so I'm not having to flip back and forth. One thing to note is that originally during the budget, we thought we'd come in with an ending fund balance at 37%. It's now projected to be at 39%. So we did come in a little bit better, but there's been a few changes. Actually, the fund balance that we projected in the budget is coming in a little over $300,000 more than expected, but we've already accounted for those expenditures where there's just some unexpected expenditures throughout the year already that have pretty much eaten into all those funds. But there's been a few positions that have been added. One was the SRO through the school district levy. We didn't budget we didn't budget that last spring because we didn't know if the levy was going to pass or not at the time. It passed. They agreed to fund 50% of it, so now we have 50% of the cost. But still great, we have 2 SROs. And the other one is, I know they're kind of in the recruiting phase, is they're looking to hire a deputy city attorney. Our current city attorney is going to be out all next fiscal year. I don't know if I can discuss the details of that, but so we're in need of an individual to be in-house to kind of fill his shoes.
I think it's okay. He's in the Army National Guard and is deploying to Kosovo.
Yeah.
He was pretty specific, though, I thought, saying you need to hire somebody.
Yeah.
I don't think we should, because
I wouldn't,
feels like
I
we're
wouldn't
teasing.
characterize it that way.
Oh, okay. I thought he was pretty,
I mean, the council has been in conversations about the different ways we could decide, different ways that we could approach covering for him in his absence. And ultimately, I think it was our direction that said this is the direction we want to go. So it was his recommendation, but ultimately,
because I think it's good.
yeah, and he'll come back.
Oh, we definitely need something well done.
Yes.
Yeah. And so those are the 2 main changes. There's still a few things that we're watching and analyzing. One
Those
thing.
2 things drove the difference between 21% and 17%?
Yeah, I did a exercise because when you look at the SRO, half of the SRO, that's fully funded by the general fund. And while the other one, the deputy city attorney, is 60% general funded because we do allocate out roughly about 40%
So
of the cost.
1.1 FTEs drives a 4% difference in the 5-year forecast. That's it. There's no other factors involved in that change.
So you assume the deputy would be fully funded for the full 5 years?
No, that the
Half funded? Not the SRO, the deputy attorney.
He said 60% to the general fund.
yeah. So the way I calculated out the general fund, you notice it's kind of a not so drastic of a downhill, but really the impact we're going to see on the deputy city attorney is in years 3, 4, and 5 because our current city attorney is going to be out. Then when he returns, now we'll have the 2 salaries. So yes.
Okay.
This-
That was my question. It was in just the first year or it was in that?
Yeah, the forecast is very sensitive when you add personnel. I'll be completely honest. I did run an exercise with senior leadership just to show, okay, coming into budget season, let's look at what a $100,000 salary would do to the general fund. And it actually dropped it below the 20%. It's very sensitive because, that's a salary for the whole 5 years. And it's not just a one-time expense or anything like that. But yeah, it's pretty sensitive.
What's our annual operating revenue, dollars? That might be good to have on here in the future.
Okay.
Just don't redo them, but the next time you do it, it might be good to know 20% of operating revenues, what does that mean in dollars? What is the total operating revenue? What's 20% of operating revenue? Because then it helps me contextualize. You're saying 100,000, okay, over 5 years, it's 500,000 plus benefits. I can roughly do the math on that, but is operating revenues $1 million or $800 million or somewhere in between, right?
Yeah, I can add even the additional
Yeah.
Excel right down below. Yeah,
I don't need it in the graph, just,
down below there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That might be good to know.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, and this is very preliminary. We haven't got into budgeting yet. I mean, there's still a lot of unknowns that we got to work through.
Yeah. I mean, we're still working on projections. All the departments have had open positions. I'm at half staffing right now, so I do have open positions, and so there's going to be some cost savings there. But yeah, there's savings, and the city and the departments, they're good about not spending 100% of their budget. Since I've been here, this is going to be now my 5th budget here at the city. I haven't seen a department spend 100% of their budget, so there's always savings. So,
And then if the full-time employee, the FTE,
gets hired for like the water department or something, it doesn't all come out of the general fund, right? So it wouldn't be as sensitive for some employees, right?
Yeah, so if it was, someone, what's a good position for you? The maintenance worker for the water fund, yeah, they're fully funded by the water fund.
Okay, perfect. So when you say an FTE impacts this, you really only mean some FTEs that are that are the ones that are funded by the general.
The general
Okay.
fund.
Okay.
Yeah, there's only a few departments in the general fund. It's administration and public works, but the police and community services. I mean, I know we're using our transient lodging tax revenue to help fund the arts center, but most of those two departments, police and community services, are 100% general funded.
Yeah, so art center, senior center, field house, police, administration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, any other questions?
Expensive to have a city, huh?
It is. It is. Our budget, it was interesting. I was looking at our budget in 15, 16. I think our budget was around 48 million. Now it's 112 million dollars, and that's just the city. We're not talking the URA. That's just the city portion. So,
Well,
yeah, we've grown quite a bit.
I mean, I'm going to say some very nice things, because this committee and the staff should be very proud of themselves, because of this attention we pay to these 5-year forecasts and the care we take. We have a lot of cities around us that are having to cut services because they have huge budget holes to fill. So,
I like to remember the process we went through a few years ago where we grilled every department
yeah.
as if, it was our money they were spending. So.
And something that's going to be, I think, a little bit newer to me, because I have a newer boss sitting right next to me. We're going to do what we call a more of a collaborative budget. We're all going to get together with our budgets at the beginning of April. Take a look at where we're at, because the first thing you got to do when you budget is you have to balance your budget. And whether that's pulling things out, departments kind of negotiating back and forth, we got to balance the budget. Then from there, I have to see if it works in the 5-year forecast, because if not, then we got to go back, re-pull out some more things. So it's kind of a back and forth, but we all agreed we're going to work together this year and years moving forward, just so everyone in the room has a voice and we understand everyone's needs. I understand it hasn't happened in the past, but there hadn't been a lot of need, because it was pretty easy to balance the budget, even during COVID. There hadn't been a lot of cuts and so forth. So. But yeah, we're going to work on that this year, so it'll be exciting. The next item on the agenda is interfund loans. So interfund loans, Oregon budget law, per the ORA statute 294-468, a government may loan money from one fund to another. Now you have some funds that will just give the money to another fund, but what we're looking at is doing to help fund the pedestrian bridge is kind of doing an interfund loan. There are two different types of interfund loans. There's the operating and a capital. Operating, that's just covering operational expenses. Oregon budget law says you have to pay that back within 1 year. Capital, they give you up to 10 years to budget that back, or to repay that loan in 10 years. But one thing you have to do is each year you have to budget that debt service payment, because the fund that borrowed the money is going to have a debt expenditure, and the fund receiving it can have interest revenue.
And you mentioned the bridge project. We're talking about URA money here, not in terms of paying it back, not general fund money.
Exactly, and I'll get to that here in a second. One question this committee might have are interfund loans common? The city of Sherwood has utilized interfund loans before, and actually last night one just got approved from City Council. This is for the Community Investment Fund. That's where we set aside, it was roughly a little over $4 million. There was a need for the sanitary fund to borrow $600,000, so resolution was passed, so the Community Investment Fund can loan the sanitary fund $600,000. It's for a capital project. It's for Schaumburg.
Schaumburg Sanitary.
Yeah, Schaumburg Sanitary Project, and that's going to be repaid back in 10 years. I put some other examples in 2001. I purchased the Snyder Park property. A portion of that, we utilized one for the YMCA expansion. I'm not going to go through every one of those. But other Oregon municipalities do utilize this. This is not a complete list, but I just threw a few on there, the first ones that came up in Google. McMinnville, Bay City, St. Helens, Wilsonville, Gold Beach, even Tualatin right down the road. City of Portland too, they utilize it. It's very common, so it's not uncommon, it's just, it's a way to borrow money without incurring all those professional fees. Whenever you go out on the market, you have all those underwriting fees. You have bond counsel fees, and you could spend up to $200,000 to $250,000 just on those services alone. And the nice thing right now with this loan that we're going to be doing for the PED Bridge is we don't have a need right now for it. It will be coming, but we needed to pass that resolution in December to determine whether we could sign that contract or not. Because right now we do have funds available in the URA, about $15 million, but the contractor, I would hope, is not going to ask for the full amount up front, or hopefully wouldn't pay the full amount up front, so we can still earn that 5.2% interest rate we're earning in the LGIP account right now. So we're going to look at when is the URA going to need these funds to continue the bridge project, and then to structure our loan and the repayment terms based off of the city projects and the needs of the city. Now, how is this loan going to be repaid? Through tax increment financing. That is your next slide. Basically, it's also, you might have heard us throwing around TIF revenue. That's the terminology for it. So TIF allows cities to borrow against future tax increases in designated areas. The one thing I wanted to make sure to note, this is not an additional property tax to property tax owners here in the city. Basically, we developed the 2021 URA plan. We identified chunks of land or parcels of land that are going to be included in this URA. The assessor's office freezes that assessed value, and then any growth over that is what this URA brings in. Now, there's some complicated calculations that occur because there's many URAs in Washington County, and where you all split the money up at so much. Oh, go ahead.
I would say that's a really important point, because it's not just our property taxes for the city, it's all taxing agencies, so the county, fire, schools. Schools don't care because all their money goes to the state anyways. So we're not just, so we're losing a little bit going into the general fund over time, but we're gaining a ton because we're getting that TIF revenue from all the taxing agencies that our URA covers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're not seeing increases in property taxes either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the one exciting news, and something I wanted to put in here about the current 2021 URA, is just kind of where we're at right now. In the original plan that was put together from some consultants, they projected TIF revenue to be this current fiscal year $677,000. Well, the county imposed this fiscal year a little over $1.1 million. So we're already ahead of schedule. That $1.1 million represents, if you were to look at the plan, we according to the consultants, in fiscal year 25-26, we're going to hit that mark. So that's some great positive news. It shows there's been a lot of activity going on. So we are ahead of schedule, which just helps us to continue to fund these projects, whether it's through TIF revenue or taking out loans to build these projects, which is TIF revenue will pay back those loans. But I wanted to share that exciting news.
So David, what, for the, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Is this coming from budget, or is this coming from council? Who's proposing the TIF?
Well, nobody's proposing it. It was passed when we passed passed the URA. So the URA that was a few years ago now. So basically, as David described, right? So imagine a piece of property that's inside the bounds of the URA, and it's just a bare dirt, and maybe it has a.
I just wanted to know where, that's all, you answered my question.
Oh, okay, okay.
I'm good on all this.
Yeah, the council passed it a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I think it was
Yeah.
2021 roughly there, so yeah.
Sorry, I mean, your.
Yeah, and it replaced a URA we've had in place for a long time that actually built the art center in this building.
And paid off early.
Yeah, and that one was paid off and closed at the end of June. I want to call it the old URA, but it's the original URA. So I call it original.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So the URA is lending money to,
No, the city's going to be lending money.
city is lending money to the URA.
Yeah, because the PED Bridge is a URA
Got it.
project. Yes.
So what fund in the city is lending the money?
The water fund, because
The
right
water
now,
fund.
basically the water fund right now, they have capital projects and needs, I'm thinking about 8-10 years out roughly. And so it can afford, it has a healthy balance built up in its capital projects fund that there's really not a need. So we're going to restructure the loan. We're going to structure the loan repayment based off of future projects in the water fund to make sure that they still get to meet their commitments.
And is there an interest rate that the water fund is charging the URA?
Yes, per Oregon budget law, it's done through a resolution through council. They suggest you use the LGIP rate that's closest to the passing of the resolution, but actually council can determine the rate.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
They can change.
Yeah, it would be appropriate to change the rate. It'd almost be maybe like a variable rate, because I can't imagine in 10 years' time the interest rates are going to be 5.2%, but I'll take it if they're going to be that high. But I got to imagine things are going to start.
I think the point is we have to charge some amount of
Yes.
fair interest rate between the funds.
Yeah.
So the water fund will get back more than it lent out, but not exorbitant. It's not going to be 20% or anything.
Yeah.
But are you saying right now that we don't know what that rate is, and that rate is yet to be determined?
Right now the LGIP rate just changed last week to 5.2%. So I do know the rate.
You're using something close to that.
Yeah, unless for some reason before I bring a resolution to city council and the rate say jumps to 5.5%, then I'd be looking at that rate. So it really, just depends on where that rate is closest to the resolution. Passing is what budget law terminology says.
And part of the,
No, go ahead. You deferred to me.
yeah, that's okay. Thank you. Part of the calculus too is like when interest rates are really low and we could go out and get bond at like 2%, you know, at that point it made a lot of sense to go out through the banks and do it and do it ahead of time, put all the money in an investment. David's done an amazing job at that and sit there and earn 5% while we're paying 2%, right? But when the interest rates popped up, you start thinking, okay, at least this is how I think about it. Do I want to pay a bank the interest or do I want to pay ourselves the interest?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep the money within the city funds.
Yeah.
Mine's, can you go back to that, somewhere I just glossed over it. Will you go back to the water? How's the water funds, we're loaning I mean, I understand that, but then how's the water fund paying back?
No, the water fund will be loaning the URA
Okay.
the money, and the URA through tax increment financing dollars will be paying that back.
Thank you. That's where I was sitting here thinking, I flipped that in my head.
The water fund has this $10 million right now that's available. The URA is so new, there's not enough money built up in it yet, but we're gaining $1 million a year. So over the course of time, we'll have money sitting in the URA then to pay back that water fund before we need
Water
it.
fund will need that money.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah,
in 8 to
absolutely.
10
You
years.
have projects
Yes.
on a 10-year basis where that water fund needs to be made whole.
Yep, and we will structure that loan to make sure that happens. And I want to let everyone know in here, I believe I hadn't looked at it, what the balance of the water fund was. I looked at it in November. It was roughly $24.8 million in the water fund. So but they do have a large project going on down at the Willamette intake facility. But I think there's only a few $1 million, $2 to $3 million left to be spent on that project. But then I think it's in 10 years' time, that 10 years' time has already changed, but I think there's additional expansion. Is that right?
Yeah.
I would say your next treatment plant expansion is going to be early 2030, so somewhere between, and that's based off of consumption. So it could be later, it could be right at, we start working on it.
West goes in?
Yep. Yep.
So if I look at it glass half full, we're not draining the water account. There'll still be enough there not only to meet the current projects, but if there's some sort of emergency or some sort of a plan that had to be accelerated, the water fund would have enough to cover that for the short little bit. If I'm glass half empty guy, then I would say borrowing this money though takes away a source for potentially other projects that as a city we may want to do, like when we talk about, hey, we're optimistic we might get these other, bits of money from the federal government or different things, but what we're saying is that by doing this, if we need money for some of these other projects that we don't get money from the federal government for, but we decide we've got to go ahead and do them, we don't have as much to borrow out of the water fund. We may have to go out after that, right?
Yeah.
To get something.
It's all about priorities.
Oh, yeah, no, I know. And by the way, I understand, this was a top priority for the URA, and so, but it does weaken us from we don't have that 15 million now in the water fund to be able to do Ice Age Drive or clean up the tannery side or something. And by the way, that's fine, because we all voted on the priorities, right? But that's the glass half empty. Part of it is we're expending it, but we know that we're a little bit, we don't have as much in the bank.
And one thing I wanted to let the committee know, and I don't know if council knows this yet, but I just had a good conversation with Elaine Howard. She's the one that set up the original plan. And they can start some work in March to relook at the plan, because those costs are probably a little outdated now, given COVID hit in the economy. And we have a better sense of now where the TIF revenue has landed. So now we're going to look at the plan again to say, when can we go out for that next borrowing so we can plan that project coming up, and really take a look at and have some good discussions on that of, like I said, yeah, when could we go off?
Yeah, and that's great, because, it's one thing to say, oh, well, we can't borrow for, 10 years is different than we can't borrow for 2 years, right? You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
So could you just, the current forecast that they did, that the consultants did when we set up the URA, what's the total expected revenue over the 30-year life of the URA?
What was the maximum done? It's $166 million, I think, was $166 million in projects.
And how much have we bonded against it so far?
Between the two.
Rough is fine.
Yeah, so far about $28 million, and then we're going to bond, I don't want to say bond against it, we're going to loan against it $12 million, but it'll be paid back. But, so it's been about $28 million.
Yeah, and if interest rates all of a sudden pop down to like 2%, we could always consider bonding against it and paying back the water fund early.
Yeah.
There's lots of ways to look at that.
Yeah.
I interviewed the chairman of the Fed a couple of nights ago on this story, and he indicated that he's confident that, like, middle of the year, they may reduce the interest rate.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, I thought they were going to do it in March, but yeah, he held strong. Yeah.
They were hesitant about doing it now.
Yeah.
But
It's an election year.
Yeah.
So I have a question that might be kind of squirrel, but you had mentioned that there was $600,000 that was not, I guess, loaned or whatever from the
Community investment. Yeah.
Yeah. And what is the goal of that funding? I mean, when are you thinking of using that to make some,
Are you talking about the 600,000 or the community investment fund overall?
the community investment fund overall? Because isn't that what the money from the Y?
No, that's not from the Y.
Okay, so
So where that came from is we got a big check from the federal government when the ARPA funds went out.
Oh, okay.
So, and that money was restricted. You could only spend it on certain things. So staff came up with a good idea, because we were allowed to pay police wages with that. So we used it to pay police wages, and then the money that we saved, we basically took restricted dollars and turned it into unrestricted
Okay.
one-time dollars and put it into this capital.
Yep.
Did I get that right?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Total in that fund? Or
It was a little over $4 million that was transferred over there.
how much have we spent?
Soon to be 600,000.
That wasn't the loan, that was just the 600,000 was just for spending.
Oh, no, that will be a loan, so, yeah, I guess that's,
We haven't spent any.
we haven't spent any yet. I know there was 250,000 that was set aside for police. Folks agreed on that. It's not the end of the year yet, because I told this committee we'd look at actual costs, so really where those officers are gonna land towards the end of the year, and then I'll ask for supplemental budget through a transfer, so, yeah.
Getting back to the general fund, what the hell, the general fund?
For,
The police, if you like funded the ARPA funds with the police funds?
it would, but it would have gave us almost a $10.5 million fund balance, which would have put us,
Well, I'm sorry, I may be misunderstood, but if you use some of that money to fund the police, wouldn't that help the general fund, that 5-year forecast you were talking about?
But instead of leaving it in the general fund, we created this.
Oh,
community
created a
investment
new
fund.
one, gotcha.
Yeah.
So it's
All right,
basically a net zero in the general fund.
yeah,
This money came in, this money went out to this community investment fund so that we would have it to spend on whatever we decide to spend on.
And we didn't want to mingle one-time dollars with ongoing.
Yep.
Because it makes it look like you have more than you really do when you don't want to like hire a bunch of people with one-time funds, right?
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Because it's hard enough to keep the budget
Yeah.
the way it's going.
But there was an agreement,
So
and we talked about it briefly. I don't expect anybody to remember.
Cliffhanger from last year.
Yeah.
Really, that's, wasn't that we were kind of at the end of the budget cycle last year, that's what we discussed, this ARPA fund?
Yeah, so the 250,000 that's going to help fund the police, really, it's the career cycle planning. I never get that right. Our HR director, that's the terminology she uses. But the police officers, they're having retirements, and so we're trying to bring officers in earlier. Succession planning, workforce planning, I like to call it. But so we're kind of basically over hiring for that short time to allow some of those officers to either be allowed to get out in the field or get through their training. I mean, they're having good luck hiring laterals, so, which is nice.
The chief explained that during
Yeah.
the budget process. that
Yeah.
They were trying to hire ahead of the retirements
Exactly. They got to get ahead of that, because
and
that's,
train
yep.
them before, somebody leaves.
I think the chief and all of us in this room, through funding, have done some of the other policies we've implemented. One of the other things we did with police is implement a sabbatical policy, right? So
That's right.
There's a lot of things that we're doing to make it a very attractive place for police officers, certainly, to want to work. And
Yeah.
We're seeing good luck with that through all the lateral hires we're seeing.
we are not having the issues a lot of departments around us are having in terms of a lot of open positions and stuff. Yeah.
Sorry, I just want to knock on wood there.
Yeah, we pulled somebody out of retirement, so, that's.
I think the Facebook thing every week or bi-week, whenever they do it, is really getting public support for the police hiring process, because they're doing a great job.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been.
And it shows the public what they're doing.
They're real people and humanizes them, as the chief said at the awards banquet last week. And I don't remember the exact stat, but from when we started doing the Crimey Chronicles and the videos and everything, the number of followers on those pages have increased 7x. Went from
90,000.
90, we're up to 90,000?
90,000.
Yeah,
Wow.
and it was at 5,000 when we started, so. it's
And
incredible.
the post with the, well, the dogs.
Well, yeah, the social media.
Well, the
campaign, they've done a
posts-
really good job.
The post with the the lion or whatever on the police car, that went viral nationwide. It was crazy, yeah.
And it should.
And other departments started copying us, yeah. Yeah.
But we're continuing to look for alternative funding sources, some programs that have come out through the IRS that actually qualify now for nonprofits and governments. So, so we're continuing to look at those buckets of monies to, keep this.
Craig and I are going to DC in March
Yeah.
to meet with Wyden and Merkley and Salinas. We have an earmark in the ag bill right now for broadband money that we just need Congress to pass the budget. Will come our way, and we're working on some additional sewer money for a sewer replacement project in the downtown area, and we're applying for some federal grants for the cleanup. So.
A lot of exciting things coming up.
For the properties that are in the URA that have had their property tax frozen, when that time period ends, what happens to the property tax?
It goes back to the city.
Property tax rate doesn't change, but everything rebalances out.
Yeah.
So they'll see a jump in there.
So
And just to be clear, like, their tax isn't frozen. The tax, the portion of that tax that goes to the city's general fund and the other agencies is frozen.
Gotcha.
As their value goes up, they pay the extra tax on their value. That's the part that goes into the URA instead of the other agencies in the general
But it
fund.
goes up the same way that all of ours.
Yes.
go up.
Yeah.
It doesn't go up more because.
Right. It's just
they're
where
in
the
URA.
gained money goes into
Yeah.
the URA instead of.
Yeah, it just
all the
diverts
other
the
funds.
money for,
When our last
for,
URA closed, when our former URA closed out, we saw about a $500,000 jump in our property taxes going into the general fund.
yeah.
Right, but the property owners wouldn't have noticed.
They would.
No, they wouldn't notice where the redirect, just be the same amount if we had a URA, if we didn't have URA, and so it's not increased here. It just gets redirected a certain way
Yeah.
through the county.
I've had this
Is it
explained.
differently though on their yearly statement? I mean, isn't it in a different?
It is in a different.
Oh, do
it's
they
divided
separate
out,
it?
yeah.
Okay.
Yes, that's true.
So they would see it on their statement, but I just want anybody watching YouTube land, it's not additional tax. So if,
It nets
it'd be
out to
the
zero,
same amount if it was one line or two lines. So it would still equal. So.
So this list that council has, can we have that list before the next meeting?
What list, I'm sorry.
Your priority list of projects you're going to do, projects that you already launched and projects you plan to do.
Oh, that's our vision, our goal setting session last year has all that in it, and we're.
I think you're talking about the URA projects, which is in the URA budget.
Plan.
and-
I'll send it to you. I'll email to you. It's online, but I'll email to you. And
But just to be clear on that, so when we do the URA, we have to identify a bunch of projects, right? And we identify a lot. We just frankly throw everything at it. But ultimately, when we decide how we're prioritizing all the projects across the city, it's going to be a subset of that. So, and that's really driven out of our visioning and goal setting and projects that come out of that. Like the bridge is in our current project list for the visioning and goal setting.
And I would even say that the goals that we did last Saturday are going to come up with specific projects and deliverables from Craig's team. And, if there's more that, that we can afford, then that's when we say, okay, well, is it still a high enough priority that we would, spend from the URA or different, that's when the horse trading comes in, where we would say, okay, do we not do this, or is it a high enough priority that we do it? And that's where, yes, we said, I wasn't a part of it, but we said, here's the list of things that we're gonna do, but it's kind of refined and looked at now on a yearly and 3 years and stuff.
I think we have to be careful too, because we're talking about two different things,
Yeah.
right? We have our overall city goals, some of which could be funded through the URA, but not everything in our city goals is eligible to be, like, it has to meet the criteria of the URA. So I think
Right, but like that's why the pedestrian bridge is a top goal for a lot of the people that are on Craig's team, right? They've got to make progress on that and get it to happen, but it is being funded by the URA. Right?
Yeah, I mean, for any project we want to do, we're going to sit down and go, okay, what's the best way to fund this? You know, we have, is it in the water fund? Is it a sewer project? Is it a general fund project? And then you have a choose your own adventure and pass and how you get there and which one works best. So the URA, the geographic boundaries of the URA were specifically designed so that bridge project could be in it. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And some other potential projects that are in the URA list, right?
Yeah.
The boundaries of the URA were designed that those could potentially be in there.
I was going to say, if anybody's interested, there's a great URA map right over there that you can see what parcels of land are in the URA.
And how often can you change
Like the,
the boundaries? Can you take, yearly, can you take certain lands out and put certain lands in? Say we wanted, say as a city, you decided you wanted to sell some land. It was part of the URA at this point. But you decided that that land would be more useful if you sold it. Could you do that?
We can just sell it out of the URA. We don't even have to transfer it.
yeah.
But yes.
But if you're asking, can we change those boundaries based on where we're seeing growth and where opportunity?
Well, you obviously have to do that.
And we,
As the boundaries grow.
right. The state puts a lot of limitations
Yeah,
on
I
us.
was
So
gonna say.
I can't remember the exact, but only a certain percentage of our overall land can be in the URA. So there are some rules around that. And when we had both running at the same time, we had to balance all that.
Yeah.
But, you know, if we see opportunities to increase those TIF revenues by changing that boundary, we absolutely consider that. And then
I
there's a
think that-
process you go through to do that.
Yeah, I think the old plan was amended around 2010, 11. They did an amendment to it, so.
It's not something you can do every year. It's like
Yeah.
doing it costly, right? But over the life of the URA, you could probably do it a few times.
Yeah.
As needed,
As needed,
not for fun.
just for fun.
None of it's fun.
David, you need some work.
Yeah.
Brian just said.
I'll take,
Brian just said this was a cliffhanger from last. Some people do see this accounting as fun, so maybe putting a URA together is fun for some people.
See what the outcome is. Well, you were referring to it right when I interrupted you. There's some you remember from last year. I think that's what you were going to say. So
Yeah.
that's why I just said I remember having this discussion.
Yep.
in budget last year. So.
yeah. I don't remember what I did 2 weeks ago. Good memory. My mind's going about 30 different places right now. But no, yeah. No, things are going really well in the URA. It's exciting. It's exciting. When do we break ground for the bridge? Is that coming up soon?
March 5th?
Yeah?
Yeah.
I still don't see the bridge. I still think it's one of the goofiest things I've ever seen.
Oh, it's-
And the original plan for the bridge was even more Disney-like. But I just hate seeing so much money be put into a project that maybe 9 people a day, maybe 2 to 9 people a day are gonna use. So somebody,
2 to 9 people.
the pedestrian bridge,
Across the street.
I just don't see that many people crossing the street.
We
We actually talked about this. We talked about this quite a bit when we were deliberating our final
We actually had
decision
a
last
pedestrian
month.
traffic study done too.
Okay,
Yeah, so,
But I also think
nobody seems to know where that.
oh, we can get that for you.
the way I think about it is thinking longer term, right? It may not pencil out day one, like we need this bridge the day it opens to move all this foot traffic, right? But I think about over the life of as Sherwood West develops and as more and more people get over there and everything, like it is going to get more and more use over time, and it's only going to get harder and harder and more costly to build in the future.
Yep.
That's kind of the way I think about it.
Costs are,
Well, that's a huge.
yeah.
I agree with Nancy. Most of them aren't gonna walk, but
Yeah, I hate to be the one to break this.
they're gonna drive. Or,
They're either
Well,
driving or
when the high school opened up, I went, because I was concerned about it, and I have a kid that lives in Woodhaven and wants to walk. I sat in the YMCA parking lot just watching, and there was quite a few kids walking to school across that. I don't have a number, but it wasn't 9, it was more like 40, 50.
Well, and I use the Meineke, cross, and there are so many athletes and runners and walkers. Like, I would just think that just adding a little bit more time to cross that, I would do it as a.
And speaking as somebody who voted against it, when you pair it, but mostly it was the price tag. It wasn't the concept of it, right? I love, and by the way,
And I want to move the bridge further down.
well, we've got some ideas for that, but I think where I'm kind of coming to, I'm not going to say I'm all the way there okay with the cost, but pairing it with a master plan where we say, hey, we're going to have, a walkable, hospitality zone right next to that high school, and we're going to have with restaurants and, tasting rooms and different, like, can you make it so that it is actually more functional and usable? And then on the other side, okay, well, there's people that would want to go work out at the Y and, in some high density housing there or whatever, and, I'm going to just run there because it's cheaper, or, it's not cheaper, but it's safer, and it's 500 feet, right? To go over. And by the way, the other thing that you can be rest assured of is it's
900.
900. There we go. But the other thing is, and this is, it's a beautiful bridge. It really is. It's not
So it won't be a home for the homeless.
But, no. And in fact,
If you go into downtown Portland, you will notice that the bridges that are pedestrian bridges are homes for the homeless.
yeah,
For a simple reason, there's no services near it.
yeah.
There's no,
If you build it, they will come.
I don't think so. Just in looking at the design, I mean, it really is. It'll a landmark and a gateway to the city. I mean, for all of those things, I was really, thrilled about it. It was, it was really only the price tag. But if you just said, okay, well, it's free, I'd be like, oh, yeah, let's do it, tomorrow, right? I know, but that was my issue was more with kind of with the cost. But I philosophically and everything else, I think you're going to be very happy, and I do think it'll get more used, but it's, we got to do the rest of the planning in Sherwood West and other things. So
It's kind of on the border of Sherwood West.
yeah.
So, as soon as that's fully developed, that's going to be a big portion.
I think so.
And you mentioned moving it or having it in a different location. We do have in our TSP and the regional transportation, RTP, longer-term plan. And again, funding these projects takes years of work, but to create a grade-separated crossing just north of Meineke where Cedar Creek is. To do that, we will have to lift 99 up and probably put 250-foot spans in. It's about the only way you can do it. But for that project,
Are you going to hold it?
yeah, we'll hold it up. But it's all these projects start with, okay, here's an idea. Do we have community support? And then you work hard over years and years and years to figure out. I mean, we started on the bridge project in 2018 when we really started working on that, and we got $4 million from the state after 2 to 3 years of work. It just, all these things take time. Yeah.
I received a history lesson when I was looking at those interfund loan stuff. Oh, they purchased it this, but wow, look how long it took to actually start that project. But the forefront thinking, we got to do this first, and 5-10 years later, then it actually goes into.
Then you have to position yourself. I mean, we've done a preliminary, what do they call that study on Cedar Creek? The water. The floodplain study. And you do some of the preliminary engineering, so you're eligible to go to the feds and ask for grants and stuff like that. And Metro and Salem won't take you seriously unless you kind of started down those steps. So.
So what, for the pedestrian bridge, that's going at the intersection of the YMCA, right, where the cameras
Yeah.
are at? Does
Yeah.
that mean you guys have to take the cameras down
No.
once the bridge is up?
Nope.
So it won't be,
It'll actually just be just north of the intersection, and then there'll be a ramp that starts up at that corner, turns over, and then it'll cross 99 and the it'll cross 3 roads and land on the high school side.
Students aren't crossing those other two roads when they get to the other side, so it'll span the whole,
gotcha.
it'll be almost a
Which
thousand
is
feet.
one of the reasons the cost bloated so much, right? If you just cross 99,
Yeah.
like, I'm sure the cost could have been half of what it was, but then we don't really solve the ultimate purpose, right? We need to get people from all the way to the high school. So that was a no.
But if you look at the preliminary first bridge drawings,
Oh,
they are crazy. They
They-
start on the other side of the Y and take it all the way over to the door, the side door at the high school.
there was a lot
It was
of,
like 4 or 5
You're gonna be on this
options.
bridge.
there was a lot of different concepts explored, yeah.
So, it should have never been put on the website.
Well, and those engineering models where they just do the volume models, they're not pretty. Yeah, they're
That
not
was-
pretty.
It's a horror to look at that.
And I think the first pass that came was us. I mean, I think their job is to say, here are all the possibilities, right? And then immediately, the one like that, we're like, no, throw
Yeah,
that out,
really.
right? But
They'll be on the bridge all afternoon.
Well, that's all I have.
No, you have something else. What we talked about in West Alabama, you said something happened with cameras.
Oh, no, we're still analyzing the cameras, when they're gonna get up and running, fully. I know that,
Put it too far back.
yeah, there's a little bit of the, some tickets we had to, what's the proper terminology? Vacate?
No.
Refund?
Dismiss.
Vacate. Dismiss. Yeah.
So if you don't mind it, since
Yeah,
I was,
no,
I was
take it
knee-deep
over.
in dealing with that, or up to here with it. So when we were gonna turn those cameras on, but more importantly, when we set the speed limit to 35 before the cameras were on, and by the way, we didn't do that. The county and ODOT did that. ODOT issued an order for where the signs had to be placed. The county contractor did not put them in the correct place. Now, I don't know if the contractor was just told bad information. We don't know exactly where that breakdown occurred, so I don't want to point fingers anywhere. But, right, so, and it was like that for a long time. When we turned the cameras back on after getting approval from ODOT, that's when we started getting people calling up and saying, hey, there's a problem. So, and there were some people online that really got involved with that. And so we said, okay, let's go see what's going on. That's when we realized that signs had not been put up correctly. And it's just patently unfair to give someone a ticket when the sign's only 35 feet from the intersection. So we made the decision to, when we say we, our prosecutor and our judge made the decision to dismiss those tickets. Staff, now that puts a huge workload on staff. They're working through that and doing a great job. But it was only northbound. And it was, and as I told,
Highest volume, correct?
I'm sorry?
Isn't that the highest volume?
The highest volume is actually Sunset
Yeah.
in Elwart, by a long shot, by a huge, yeah. But but we also, I mean, if you blaze through there at 90 miles an hour, you're still gonna get a ticket.
Yeah.
But,
we just dismissed the ones that were below 56.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Still, that's a huge.
Well, that's the normal.
Because that's 11 miles
11?
over the speed limit, yeah.
And it impacts the budget to some extent.
It does. I don't-
We're still analyzing it. I think it's too early to say. Is it hundreds of thousands of dollars, or is it more minimum amount? Because when you take a look at a ticket, we don't get to retain the whole amount. We send a large portion of that goes to the state and to the county, so.
And not all those tickets have worked their way
But it's still a
through.
bottom line in our revenue.
Yes, yeah.
It's a bottom line, but we were probably, it wouldn't have been in the original forecast to see that surge in tickets.
We never would
Yeah.
have budgeted for that amount.
Yeah.
Well, we were also really conservative about that anyway, because there were a few other factors we didn't know about, so.
We didn't know when we were going to reopen.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so true. I mean, Beaverton had to increase their permanent tax rate to fill a $10 million budget.
I'd love to say no to the departments. They get mad at me.
No,
Just kidding.
no, well, we didn't have that problem, yes.
And the reason is because.
We're conservative, yep.
Is there a postscript on that, just that has nothing to do with the budget, that is ODOT work with those contractors and do like any kind of root cause analysis and figure out so they can kick it back so it doesn't happen again, either us or other people down?
Yeah,
communities
yes,
down the road?
yes, there's some analysis going on, and Craig and I have also been talking about, I'm sure Craig's talking internally about, do we need, like when we do this project for the bridge and the cameras might have to be turned off, what's our process, even though it's ODOT and someone else doing it, to make sure things are set up correctly, so.
Trust but verify. Get out there.
Yeah.
Major.
I'd be happy to go take them down.
Yeah, I'll snip it
How
off.
much impact is this gonna have on traffic? I mean, it's already, we're at a standstill. We actually got in our car, went all the way up the hill into the Netherlands to get around, just to get to Newburgh.
It's, we have, it's a sore spot for me because Yamhill County is growing out gangbusters. They're all coming up, for people that work in the major work centers like Alola, Hillsborough, Portland, Wilsonville, they're all coming up 99 through our community. And we are working hard to get the region to recognize that we need to invest in transportation down here.
Yeah, they need to get done, they need to get away from Snyder. Snyder, the four-way up by my house up there is a major intersection.
Yeah, and it's crazy. I mean, you talk about safety for kids.
Oh, it's,
This has gotta be just a nightmare for kids.
if you leave my house around, even if school's out, no school that day, around 4 o'clock on a work day, and you go up to, from down Woodhaven to Sunset to turn right to get onto 99, it's backed all the way up down to Pinehurst. You know, it's all people cutting through, so. What?
Trying to turn right onto 90.
I'm sorry, left onto 90, left
Right
onto
on the
90, yeah.
Sunset to turn left.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I thought you meant right onto.
That's
Why
my,
don't you just go the other way?
that's my,
Like that would-
that's my dyslexia kicking in, but,
He doesn't tune you out. I think I might have tuned you out.
I go, you know what, I go left on mine.
I do, I've learned my lesson. I do that too. But we are, Craig's team's been working on a traffic study of Sunset, and especially around Trimble and the new school and all the way up to 99, because we have some safety challenges there with those two lanes merging. So we're working up on what that project's gonna look like.
And actually, I would hope that by taking the pedestrian traffic out of that intersection where the bridge is going, that there's not as many, you know, because when you have the pedestrians crossing, you don't always have the traffic that is able to go at that same time. So hopefully, it'll flow a little bit better, but that, I think, only buys us, you know, a little bit of time by taking the pedestrians out of the equation there.
Are you
That-
actually gonna be taking the pedestrians out? Are you actually gonna take those crosswalk lights out so that they cannot use?
We can't.
Yeah, no,
Well-
we,
Can't do that.
no,
Well,
we
we-
can't,
We're
but,
pushing ODOT.
We're pushing, it's ODOT's decision. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
ODOT's decision.
Good luck,
Yeah.
because
But
that
I-
would make the pedestrian bridge actually.
That's what we want. That's what we want.
that's what we want, but I also, you know, I think there'll be some, self-selection, right? Where it's like, do I wait here for 5 minutes or do I just walk? I mean, I'm already walking. Do I just go up the stairs and walk over? You know what I mean?
It's gonna depend on, is it pouring rain and I'm scared to go walk up these stairs?
Oh, they'll be well lit.
Yeah,
It'll be
well, so
beautiful.
There's 1,000 reasons.
Yeah. All right.
We're done.
Okay.
Gosh, the microphone. All right, that's it. Budget committee meeting is now adjourned.
Awesome.
Thank you very much for coming tonight.